Bruce Robinson is a physician, a professor of medicine and a best-selling author. He's a world leader in research into asbestos-induced cancer. In his youth, he was an accomplished Australian rules footballer and went on to become a highly successful coach in the West Australian Amateur Football League. Well, these days, he's in demand as a public speaker around the world, not only on his area of medical expertise, but on the topic of fathering. Bruce, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Now, you work in an area of highly technical biological science. You've got a team of 25 or so people working in that area with you. Yet you're a man of Christian faith. Some people will say those two things are incompatible. You don't seem to think so.
Yeah, actually, I don't find it a problem. In fact, I think it's science actually leads you to ask questions about belief. It's very hard to see the complexity, the brilliant complexity of the human body or the world as with the cosmos, and not say, why is this like this? Actually, most of the people I find who think science has eradicated faith are not actually scientists. I work with scientists all the time, and many of them have this questioning, this faith, maybe there's a God.
So the further you've gone into it, actually, it's had the different effect. It's made you more likely to believe.
It has, and in fact the reason I'm a Christian in the first place is that when I became a medical student, I went from laughing at Christians in my first year to saying, this body is fantastic, it's complex, it is brilliant. Could there be a designer? That's what actually got me asking the questions in the first place, and to be perfectly honest, still keeps me asking the same questions. This is brilliant.
Now, you're a lung specialist. I imagine the good news stories in that field are quite rare, or at least you've had to face lots and lots of other people's suffering. What impact has that had on you personally?
I do deal with a lot of men in particular who are suffering. Lung cancer is the commonest lethal cancer. I have a man who's dying every week in my clinic. And it's pretty sad. I watch people suffer, I watch their partners suffer and their children suffer. The effect on me, well, often I'll cry. I'll cry with the patient, I'll cry after they've walked out, especially if they're kids. The same age as my kids. I remember walking out onto a balcony telling a guy who was my age, he's going to die. He cried, I cried. I thought I'd messed it up, but in fact it made it much warmer interaction, as it turned out. But it hasn't destroyed my faith, and it's a funny old thing. People worry that suffering excludes faith. It's very hard to understand suffering and faith, but it doesn't exclude faith. Actually, in some curious way, it strengthens my faith, but I have no simple explanation for it. Well,
it would have been tested, presumably, when you saw that sort of suffering on a massive scale when you went to Indonesia after the tsunami in 2004. What was that experience like?
Yes, that's true. Over 200,000 people died in the area that I was working, which was in northern Sumatra, in Aceh, and it was terrible. The suffering, the pall of suffering. Children who'd lost their parents, parents who'd lost their children. And I suffered too. I mean, I felt really sad, and I wept many times. You know, there's a curious thing about it, and you go to these places, whether it's Aceh after the tsunami, or jungles where people are suffering, or deserts. A lot of people there are people of a Christian faith. You'd have thought that if suffering was going to destroy faith, what are they doing there?
Those who are there helping.
Those who are there helping. The people in the hospitals. I've seen this so many times. Not everybody, but it's very common that the people who are at the cold face of suffering actually being like Jesus, reaching out and touching people with compassion. It doesn't destroy their faith. It motivates them to show the compassion of Jesus, and that's my experience of life as well.
Do you feel the weight of the question, though, when people say, how could a good and all-powerful God allow this sort of thing? Are you left with some questions yourself?
Oh, absolutely. I feel the weight of the question. I feel the weight of their own sadness often when they ask me the question. There is no trite, easy answer. The Christian view, of course, is to weep with those who weep, and that's, I think, what I do. And I feel the weight of their sadness, the pain in their hearts. I see it. And I don't have a trite answer, and I do feel that weight, but also feel that compassion as well.
Do you have any sense of an answer from your faith?
I do have an answer. I have an answer about why it is the way it is. That is, that there's a loving God and we don't understand it. I have a hope for the future, but I'm also aware that that answer doesn't satisfy people. It is the truth, but it's that vague intellectual truth that is true, but it's not where people That's not what people need when they're suffering. I think that's why the Bible says, weep with those who weep. Don't give them a trite answer. Weep with those who weep. And that's what those Christians are doing in the jungles, in the deserts, and after the tsunami. Weeping with those who weep and reaching out with compassion, not giving them that answer, even though it's the true answer.
Thanks a lot, Bruce.
You're welcome.